I wanted to make a quick video about this neck reset because there's not many resources online about it. This is a 1965 Guild Starfire V, and there's not much information about how these are constructed, more specifically like how these neck joints meet the body. They are similar to Gibson's in many ways, but they have their own like quirks to them. And one thing that I do know from experience on working on these guitars, more specifically electric Guilds, is the dovetail joint tends to be cut a little bit deeper in the neck. And I'll show you what I mean by that. First, I get in here with an X-Acto knife and I take off the heel cap. And then you'll have to remove this piece of binding. And this is only on like 60s guitars. A lot of ones, actually the higher end ones that were bound on both ends, like the 2s, 3s, the Aristocrats, they have a back body that covers this cap. It's a lot more difficult. But on these 4s and 5s, you gotta take the piece of binding off here. You can see they actually notched this to go around the dovetail. So that's some nice craftsmanship. And you can see what I'm talking about here is this dovetail on the neck, like the male side of the dovetail, is cut deeper. The pockets are cut deeper. They have this like angle to them, whereas the block on the body side is flush. And that makes it really easy to get like steam or a heating element in there. And so what I'm going to do to get this off is I'm going to throw 2 foam cutters in these 2 holes here and introduce heat to the joint and hopefully break the glue bonding here. And then I will talk a little bit more about the fretboard later. I did just want to kind of make this video really short, show you a lot on how a lot of these guilds are constructed, and like this is going to be easier than a lot of acoustic guitars where you got to break the whole fretboard free and drill in from the fretboard top down. You can just access it right from the back of the heel cap here, as long as you do it like real meticulously and cut the lacquer and then kind of pop it off. You can access the joint this way. I have my foam coaters in here. I drilled like a 2mm hole into that pocket, dropped these in there, got them going, and I notice here that there is some glue that is somewhat elasticy, stretchy. I do not think that this is factory glue. It would seem at some point somebody may have tried to put an epoxy in here or like a rubber cement. But this is not what happens to glue, like factory glue, when it gets heated. It doesn't become like Play-Doh-y. There's a little bit of give to it, but not quite like this. This seems to be something that might be more like plastic based. And so this might make this reset a lot harder. I will try to do some problem solving and do another video on how I went about doing this once I have a little bit more information as to what we're looking at. I got the neck off, and as I suspected, I do believe that someone, maybe after it came off the line at the factory, or I don't know, maybe at some point in its life, they did put epoxy or some aftermarket glue. And I will show you why I think that. So first of all, if we look here, try to zoom in on this. Okay, so there's actually some like pry marks right here, and I did not do this. I noticed this beforehand. It looks like in the finish, like someone had some sort of like spatula and was going like this. I don't believe this neck was ever taken off prior to me. And also this glue here, I don't know if you could see this, but this is like bubbly glue. It's like a different texture than what is here and what we see in the joint. This glue here also matches the texture of what we saw. Like, if I can get this to focus, what we also saw like in here. And over here, like down at the heel that I was pulling off right there. And so I think at some point someone had gotten probably an epoxy, that there was probably a gap on, I'm gonna zoom out here. I think there was probably a gap down here at the heel cap, a little bit of one. I could see a little bit of one. and they probably tried putting epoxy in there, pulling the neck back, and then maybe stuffing epoxy in here underneath the fretboard extension in the hopes of taking it and like tilting it back like this. I'm only concluding that from the visual evidence here and some experience. But another interesting thing is if you zoom all the way in on this, and I will bring this up so you can see it, this neck joint here was not fitted well. Look at all the glue that's in there. And then like this part wasn't even making contact, like all in here, this. And so I don't think that this was ever taken off. This looks like to be the first time, but a bad joint from the factory combined with the epoxy that I pulled out from here, right here. You can almost see like a drip. There's almost like a drip. Let's see here. Try to get that in focus. It almost looks like there's a run line right here where if they put it in the back, it would have ran down this channel. And here's another one right here. Just pull that right off. See how gooey that is? So it just goes to show you, you never know what you're working with when you open up a guitar. But this is what a 1965 Guild Starfire joint looks like. It is a dovetail. It's more of like a V joint. There's not much dovetailness going on here. I'm not a woodworking expert. I just work on guitars. I guess they would call this dovetail-ish, but you can see that it really doesn't really V inward. Like it's not like this. It's more of a straight cut, and it's kind of like a V. But we're gonna clean all this up. I'm gonna take all this epoxy off, sand it all down, glue some shims in there to make this a real nice fitting neck pocket, and then I'll post another video when that's done. Okay, so I put a few pictures here. The first one is looking at the body, the neck pocket. You can see how much glue is just taking up that void between the face of the neck joint and the body. And you can see how it actually settled down. They didn't even put enough in there to lock it in place, so that's why it started to compress forward. This next one, I used the depth gauge, but to show the depth of it, I flipped the micrometer around. So it's about like 2.3 millimeters of void that they tried to fill with glue. And when you put string tension on it, I mean, that makes a difference. And then you could see, looking at the heel here, just how sloppy the joint was cut. And actually, I already have a cap. I already glued a cap on the face of the neck here to kind of take up that space, that 2.5 millimeter void. But yeah, you can see the sides aren't parallel. And then with the cap in there, it was snug forward. The front of it was snug. This next one, I cleaned all the glue out. I used the DeGlue goo from, I get it from StewMac, but it breaks down like hide glue, wood glue, pretty well. And then I just scraped it out with a chisel or a razor blade. And so that's the clean pocket. And then you could see at this next one here, I started rebuilding the neck side, the caps on there. I was gluing shims on each side of the joint and then sanding it down. And I used some epoxy, like wood filler, for the part that split coming out of the. It wasn't a big one. It was just a little chip. But this epoxy wood filler here is like good for 2,500 psi. And then this next picture is that same joint, and it's already scored, getting ready to be glued. But you can see how I built up the bottom of that with some shims and then sanded them down flat. So they were taking up the space of that, the side voids of that poorly cut neck joint. And the next picture here is as I'm fitting it, you can see how much tighter it is on the sides. And that has the cap on and the shims glued to the side and that little bit of wood epoxy. And here's just a little bit further out picture as I'm starting to set it.